it is just a very beautiful experience. And now we're starting to think about, okay, this first group, they're completing next week. And what's next? We got to come up with a course for them. What's next? And I was like, okay, maybe this is the course that I can take them, the 2.0, that we can take them deeper. And then we could take them into, if they want to become an expert in the field, some of those suggestions of how to be an influencer, how to start their platform if they want.
Welcome to the Get Unhooked Podcast with Jason Coombs, where experience meets insight. Jason Coombs, nationally recognized speaker, best-selling author, and founder of Brickhouse Recovery, shares hard-earned lessons on resilience, leadership, addiction, and mental health. No filters, no fluff, just real stories, practical wisdom, and a deeper look at what it takes to grow, lead, and keep moving forward. Now here's your host, Jason Coombs.
Welcome to the Get Unhooked show. I am Jason Coombs. For those of you who are new, may you find a home here. May you find a community where you are able to feel understood and validated at how frustrating and beautiful this journey can be. And my hope is to help be your guide and to draw out some of the principles that are evergreen, principles that have blessed my family, my parents, my wife, my kids, as well as many of the clients that I work with at Brickhouse Recovery. As you may or may not know, I own a chain of treatment centers all throughout Idaho, and additionally a telehealth program that reaches the little small rural areas in Idaho. And what I have found to be the secrets to sobriety, the secrets to helping an addicted loved one recover, many of those secrets I wrote in my first book, Unhooked: How to Help an Addicted Loved One Recover. And I am currently working on and will be publishing a book that is going to likely be framed, and I'm not going to say the title yet because it's still in the works and it might change the last minute, but the content is going to be in and around the secrets that I've learned to sobriety. So, sober secrets. And the truth is that these secrets, many of them apply to you, listeners, that are looking for ways to be influential and to assist your addicted loved one to recover. Now, I'm going to ask you that if you have questions, please drop those in the chat, because it's very important that we consider some of those lingering questions that you had last week that have brought to my attention, and I'd love to respond to some of those along the way, especially when it comes to how to communicate, ways that we can influence the right way, ways that we can lower the defenses, build trust and rapport, and more than anything, well, I'll just share when my mom discovered that her son, her baby boy, was addicted to drugs and alcohol. It was like a blow to her lifestyle. It was like total blindsided. And there is a whole lesson in and around, and my latest podcast that I recommend you check out, which is the Jason Coombs. Well, it's called the Get Unhooked Podcast by Jason Coombs, and you can find it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. And I recommend you listen to that, because it's all about when we are blindsided by the either misfortune or the action of others, or it could just be something at work. How do we respond? And what are some ways that we can learn to respond differently to protect our serenity, to protect our peace, because it's in those spaces where we're able to access insight and what I like to call personal revelation from our maker. And a lot of the success that I see in families that I work with, uh, companies that I consult with, leaders that I mentor, is really in and around the decision points when we are hit and we react, and we can be proactive in our reactions. Um, we can choose to have a mindset that will allow us to accept and receive the struggle as a lesson, as a guru to teach us what it is that we need to learn. And so as my parents were blindsided, especially speaking about my mother was unsure what to do, and all she wanted were some answers and some solution um, about how to fix me, how to help me. And she searched everywhere. She searched the internet, she searched the um, libraries, and she found a lot of resources. But the reality is a lot of them are just opinions, and a lot of them are clickbait on the web, and they want you to buy into whatever philosophy they have, and they're based on opinions or maybe other motives. And it was a rabbit hole that she found herself feeling even more frustrated and more confused. And that was a very difficult season for her, because in her isolation, she didn't really want to reach out and ask for help. She just wanted to do some bibliotherapy, as we like to call, and read in the quiet of her own room or office, where she could learn how to help. And if only she had these principles in Unhooked, if only she had the lessons that we learned back then during that season, if she would have had Unhooked, she could have saved herself years of sleepless nights and stress and frustration. And it's part of me just feels so bad that it drug her through so much. Yet at the same time, she is so much better for it, because she chose to get on the offense. She chose to be proactive. She chose to embrace the cactus, so to speak. And I talk about that in some of the work I do, and some of the I actually had a keynote presentation to a networking group of CEOs last week, and the entire premise was around this: is how do we react when we're blindsided by um, difficult situations in our families, at home, or in our businesses, with our employees, etc., or with the industry that we're in. And I shared an example of when Mel Gibson was the sponsor of Robert Downey Jr. when he was getting sober. He taught him the principle of embracing the cactus, and that's one way to visualize the metaphor of embracing the cactus. And it could be applied in embracing the difficult things that we face in our lives. It can also be embracing and loving the parts within ourselves that are difficult to face and difficult to own and share with others. And so embracing the cactus, that is a very helpful principle as we are navigating how to help an addicted loved one recover. The idea of getting off the beach, it essentially is embracing the cactus of letting go and trusting that if we remove ourselves from the tsunami waves of the addicted behavior and the recourse that comes, it's a step into the unknown. It's a step into letting go of control. It's a process that is very scary for a lot of people, and so embracing the cactus might be in and around that. Um, Furthermore, I really want to, as we talk about chapter 11 in Unhooked, which is the next chapter uh, based on hope, and I point readers to chapter 11 often because there's a sober secret in here, and I do think that it also applies to listeners who are family members of addicted loved ones. And so all who are within the sound of my voice or listen to this recording, the the true secret to success is one that most people don't consider when they're first getting sober or they're first helping their addicted loved one. But when you catch it and you embrace it, the progress and the outcome is an absolute game changer. And I share this with you today because I've had some strong impressions over the last couple of weeks that I need to get this message out there to more people. It's one thing to have a book and to start a podcast and to have a coaching call, but there's a real need to get the message clear through these platforms and channels. And so I ask you to share this show, this episode with others, and I'll make it available to you so that they can hear what this secret is. I'm going to take you back in time to when I was in my 5th treatment program. Okay. Now, keep the context in mind as well, where I'm a 31-year-old male who has been through divorce and been homeless and spent about a year incarcerated at this point. And this is post having my son be born and having this big aha moment that I want to change for him, and then placing him in the arms of another family to raise through the adoption process, and still not having the tools or I didn't have the drive or the map or the path to change, even though I felt like I wanted to. And so I land after a drug-induced psychosis. I land in the hospital and then ultimately into my 5th and, God willing, my last experience in treatment. And I'm going to share with you a moment in there that I don't talk about in the book, but it's very significant, and it's come to my attention recently that it's truly one of the biggest pivot points in my journey, from an internal volition standpoint. And that is, it was a weekend, and there's a night staff. His name was Ben, and he worked nights and weekends, and he was more on call. He wasn't as one of the core staff members at the treatment center. And we got to know each other a little bit because he liked to play bongos and he liked music that I like, and things along those lines. And We were in a conversation one day when I was getting my medications and he was dispensing them. Um, he said, "Have you ever thought about being a counselor?" And I can tell you that that question stopped me in my tracks. Maybe that question had been asked before, but for whatever reason, at that moment, it hit me differently because I had this flood of thoughts, and these were the thoughts that came. The thoughts that came to me were, if there is one thing that I'm an expert in, it is failure and getting back up. I am an expert in that. Could I possibly take this experience, the last, 10 years of my life that really looks like just I squandered everything good. And, I was carrying the shame. I had these labels that were on my mind. Like, I am a horrible husband. Couldn't even care for my wife and stay married. I am a liar, a cheat, a thief, a junkie, a felon. I am a POS, and every other expletive you could come up with was my identity. Not just the way I talked about myself or to myself, but it's who I saw myself as. And I want to talk a little bit about identity, because when he asked me, could have you ever thought about being a counselor? That consideration of, I might be able to use all of this hell that me and my family went through and use it for good. And I was thinking about, like, the average lifespan of an individual. I'm just going to take a guess, say 85 years old or so. Um, and I'm 31. And I'm sitting there thinking, man, like, I kind of have 2/3 of my life left where I could leave a legacy. My life isn't over. And at 31 years old, I was just looking at and comparing myself to other 31-year-olds that I knew and I grew up with, and they were successful. They had their kids, they had their careers and their dream. Even my siblings, they were just doing wonderful things, and I was starting from zero. In fact, starting from below zero because I owed a lot of money and uh, that kind of thing. So in my mindset, it was like, I have squandered my whole life, so I'm just going to be this way. I'm not going to ever amount to anything or change. Um, when I began to see these thoughts and visions come into my, like, images coming into my head, where one of my favorite things to do was to help the newcomer at that treatment center when he would walk in the door, to do what I can to take him under my wing and guide him and help him. And I was just doing that just because that was our responsibility as individuals who had been there a couple of weeks, so we could show them around. We were, like mentors. And so, like, could I take all of this and use it for good? And I began to consider an identity change. And that is the secret. That is the sober secret. That is also a secret for every family member or support person. to view the hell as your credentials, your qualifications. You can even use the initials after your name. One of my friends, Lance Schiffman, said, My name is Jason Coombs, DMA." And people would ask him, "What is DMA?" Doesn't mean anything. It's just, it's just, I have life credentials, right? And I think that when we consider the identity, especially couched in the 4 C's of, I didn't cause it. What are some of the labels of our identity that we take on because our loved ones are struggling in mental health? Maybe they're struggling in their addictions, they're struggling in their progress or failure to launch. A number of areas that we could label ourselves as a parent or a spouse or a sibling and dwell on that. I wasn't there for them, or I shouldn't have done this, or I could have done this better. And the labels that we just start sticking on ourselves. Imagine sticky notes being posted all over yourself of these labels of negativity and shame. And when you think about going from, I'll just use the example of my example. When I used to think about going from non-sobriety to sobriety, okay, going from using to being clean, that's not identity change. Because when I would go from using to getting clean, I still identified with the loser and the POS and the failure, the bad dad who couldn't even raise his firstborn kid, the felon, the inmate, the druggie, whatever label I used to believe in. And it would just layer on label upon label upon label, and they reinforced that self-hatred and that shame. And so when you're clean and you have that identity still, sobriety is a living hell. Because what do you do with that? So a lot of people will just pivot, and maybe they're clean because they have to be, or for whatever reason, but they might, that's when you start to see poly addiction and, or cross addiction. They might pivot over to sexual compulsivity and pornography, compulsive overeating, and the list could go on. So the change for me, and the change for my mother and my father, is that we experienced an identity change where we began to see that our experience needs to be owned, embraced. The cactus needs to be embraced, and with the purpose of, let's share our experience with the world. And at that time, we didn't really have all the solution. The solution came as we were in motion of our own recovery. But what propelled us into taking the actions that qualified us for successful outcomes was, we had a why. We now had a reason. We now had an identity change where, okay, I'm going to learn this stuff. I'm going to read everything I can, not just so that I can stay sober, and my parents, not just so that Jason can stay sober, and that I can help him. But it was more like, I want to learn this because I'm in a graduate school right now to learn everything that I need to learn and take that to share it with the world. And what's cool is when they began and I began to see that bridge from struggling human to expert in this struggle, or professional in this struggle, and taking that identity leap, going from a family member who is trying to support an addicted loved one to, I want to be an influencer for many families, for many mothers, for many fathers, for many support people who also know and will have to go through what I have gone through. And I want to be there for them. And I want to know how I can assist and support them. Then the research, the suggestions, the assignments, the 10th step inventory, the the analysis of when you go through the self-reflection and you're able to identify the character defects that are blocking you off that day, and then offering those up to your creator, and you begin to change one day at a time. That process has more meaning because it's like, I'm not just doing this to see results within myself. I'm doing this because I want to learn how I'm going to better help others down the road that are going to be in my position. And the gains and the progress with that mindset make all the difference. Now, why do I know this works? I don't know the number of individuals that I have taken under my wing and have brought through this journey, this proven path, this map that I've given them, where they go from struggling to now, owning a treatment center, or becoming an author, or a recovery coach. And many of them I have hired, and they currently work at Brickhouse Recovery as an influencer. In fact, a large majority, I'd say about half of my leadership team, directors and managers at Brickhouse, are individuals who I treated and have grown up. Not only did they go through the program, they learned what lessons were available to them because they started to see that they could change their career path. They could make a living doing this. They could follow their passion. And that gave them the volition to take the assignment seriously and to engage in the suggestions that we are offering, to attend 12-step meetings, not just to go and take, but what can I give? What can I contribute? And we have seen these individuals develop and grow, and it's almost like they just become, it's very clear when we have to make a decision, like, who should we bring in to fill this position that we've created, or that we now have a hole in. And it's those individuals that are just shining. It's like, do you want to come, you want to come in? And they take an entry-level position, and then they continue to rise because they're humble, hungry. And it's that identity change that makes the difference. And there are countless examples of individuals who have come through the program, had the identity change, and channeled their passion and their desire to learn everything that they want, that they can learn, to give back and to make a living doing it. And what's beautiful is I know many family members who go through this same experience. They have this struggle with their addicted loved one. They really want to help them recover, and if they could just change, if they could just get to the preparation stage of change, and then we lay out the path for them, and then they take it, they get sober, we write a book together, and we live happily ever after. I mean, the reality is this is an adventure that continues to challenge us. And so the idea of going on that adventure is I think where hope comes. But unless there's an identity shift within you, I think it's difficult to help the right way, because it's still about them and it's still about you and them. When I would like to suggest and plant the seed for you to consider that maybe there's a calling within you from your maker that's asking you to go bigger, to think bigger, and to maybe recognize that this experience that you're walking through is uniquely qualifying you specifically to be available to many families down the road that need you. This could turn into a career path for you. There is a certification for family members that can be received, and there's a course that you take. I'm working on a course and a certification opportunity for you and for other families that join this movement in the future, where I can walk family members through the same path that I've witnessed others take, that I've led others on to get certified, and maybe even start your own practice where you can have clients that you're treating and making a living doing it, or maybe a side hustle where you're just fulfilling purpose. And there are so many opportunities when it comes to helping others. There are authors out there that are, and I'm talking to you authors, future authors, maybe even current authors, that really need to answer the call and that nudge within you of like, I should write a book about what I'm learning. I should write this stuff down. Like every little aha moment, every challenge, every day, I need to be journaling. I need to be documenting these lessons, because those are going to be the ingredients that are going to make you a bestseller. Because there will be a day, if you choose to be a change maker. The course that I'm building and creating is Chain Breaker to Change Maker. And the change maker takes on the identity of, okay, what do I need to learn so that I can be the most influential to the many? And what's cool about that is when you write your book and you start your podcast, you develop curriculum, you maybe set up your own practice. Maybe you're a therapist down the road. Maybe you're a counselor. Whatever that platform is, you will better influence your addicted loved one. And so I don't want to bypass and forget the reason that you came, which is I want to help my addicted loved one recover, but to expand your vision to see that I want to look beyond helping my addicted loved one recover and not get stuck in the weeds and look beyond that at purpose, my purpose, because all of this is, these are my credentials. These what are what make me an expert. This crap that I've gone through and the lessons I've learned, those are my qualifications. Those are what give hope. Those nuggets, that conversation that I had with that night staff, Ben, that planted a seed within me, and it was cultivated. That when I had my hot dog experience, if you guys read Unhooked, where I'm out in front of Home Depot and I'm cooking hot dogs in the blazing sun, and I'm 72 days sober, and a customer walks up to the grill and orders up a bratwurst, and then he says, "How's your day?" And if you remember, I had the classic I call the addict overshare, which sometimes our filters are broken in early sobriety because our brains need some healing, and we share things that may or may not be appropriate. And in this particular case, apparently it was appropriate, but I laid it all out. My day's going great. I'm 72 days sober off crack cocaine and heroin. I've been 5 rehabs, and now I'm, working here. And I just laid it all out. Blah. And he waited for another customer to leave, and then he said, "Hey, can I ask you a question? My son's been struggling, and I know he's been drinking. I know that he's been smoking pot, and I'm pretty sure he's using something more, but I don't know. How do I help? How do I help him?" And we spent the next 45 minutes where I was the guide. I was the expert. I could speak to my experience. I told him what my dad tried, what my mom tried, how I manipulated them, and then ultimately what they learned. I told them about Get Off the Beach. I told them about the emotional raincoat. I told them I gave him an insider view to our experience. And by the time we ended, he gave me a hug and he said, "Thank you so much." And my purpose was being cultivated from the seed that was planted. Now I was seeing myself as an influencer and a helper, and it just lit me up. I was just so high as a kite on the feelings that come from helping others. And that's the drug that I've chased ever since. And that's the drug that keeps family members engaged in this work, and people who are recovering from substance use disorder. It keeps them engaged in this work. It's because we have this identity change, this identity shift. And so as you all consider the question, what is it that I need to be learning through this? Why am I placed in this circumstance? Not from a self-pity perspective of why me? Why now? Which is very easy to get sucked into, but to embrace the cactus and say, okay, what hard lesson do I need to embrace and digest so that I can fulfill whatever purpose I'm supposed to be fulfilling? And that might look a little different for each one of you. For me, it wasn't until I was I was talking to one of it was actually my wife's sister-in-law, and she was struggling with her brother, trying to help him recover. And I remember like that day I had already received 4 or 5 calls from family members, and I found myself saying the same thing over and over. And to be honest, I just got tired of hearing myself talk. I got tired of saying the same thing over and over. And I was in a health communications course in my graduate program at the time. So this was right around 2 years sober. And one of the assignments was to write a paper on on health communications, and I was wrestling with what to write. And my professor recommended, "Why don't you do? I know you're passionate about addiction. Why don't you write a paper on the 5 keys to getting sober or something?" And it was interesting because that started the process of the initial draft of Unhooked. And I won't tell you that whole journey because that's a whole other podcast episode. But when it came to the the process of writing it down, I thought about that call that I was on with my wife's sister-in-law, the sister of my wife's first husband, and I was like, I wish I could just give her something to read and then call me back. Like, I wish I could just have all of it down, and I could just say, "Hey, I'm going to email this to you, read it, and then we're going to have a nice foundation to discuss and collaborate on solution." Because I got sick of saying it the same things over and over. And that, you guys, was the genesis of Unhooked. And so be thinking about like what's coming to you. Is it a calling for you, not just a crisis? Are you being called to be a contributor for the next generation and the generation after that, and to leave a legacy? Being a chain breaker isn't just breaking the chains of addiction, it's breaking the shame. It's breaking the chains of toxic family systems. It's breaking the chains of limiting beliefs. It's breaking the chains of negative self-talk. It's breaking the chains of feeling inadequate and doing hard things and embracing that cactus. And those are the very principles that I witnessed my parents do, and they inspire me. They inspire me because when my parents got active in their own recovery plan, it wasn't just that they were feeling better because they were doing the assignments and reporting back to family group that they had a sponsor and that they were going to meetings. It wasn't that was the high that they got addicted to. It was the fact that people started to call them because they were sharing their story. And folks from our church would reach out to them secretly and be like, "I also have a struggling kid. Like, what do I do?" And they began to be of service to all of these individuals that were they were like magnets. They were gravitating to my parents, and my parents and I would share each other as resources. Like, I'd be talking to a family member. I was like, "You know what? I actually don't know what I would do in that situation. Would you be okay if I connected you with my mom? She would love to have a conversation with you." And so then I would connect her with my mom, and they would just absolutely connect on such a deeper level, from mother to mother or sister to mother, or whatever it was. And I did that with my dad too, where a father could talk to my dad, and they would do that with me. They'd be like, "You know what? Let me have my son loop in." And so we were like this team. We were a team of influencers. And I think that's what is the most important message that brings hope, is changing what the outcome looks like, because you don't have the power or control over the outcome of your addicted loved one, which is the reason you are here. For most of you, that's why you are here, why you read Unhooked. And the bait and the switch is the goal and destination or achievement of helping your addicted loved one recover isn't the final succession. This isn't the final victory, because it wasn't the way that I recovered, and it wasn't the way that many of my loved ones and employees recovered. It was this shift in, let's take our story and help others with it. And that was what propelled us forward. Now, that might bring up a lot of questions, and that might be like, well, how do I do that? Like, I'm not sure if I really understand what my calling is, and like what's really nudging at me, and what specifically do I do with this? And my suggestion to you is to not force it, but just spend some time in contemplation. Spend some time in a vow of silence today. And make a vow of silence a part of your daily ritual, and have a pen and a piece of paper where you can write down thoughts that come to you, people that you can serve. And you will find that you will receive the inspiration that's unique to you. Because I guarantee some of you within the sound of my voice, you are hearing things loud and clear, but they're not being said by me. They are direct messages from your maker. And it's calling you. Just like when Ben asked me if I thought about being a counselor, just like that. That wasn't Ben that made me feel that way. It was definitely from my loving Father in heaven, calling me to a bigger calling, not just to get sober. Getting sober wasn't my calling. Getting sober was required to step into the arena, and then it's been a battle ever since. And I'm still in the battle. But it's different when you have an identity shift. And so I know today there are many of you who are wrestling with what's next. And how do I apply these principles to help my addicted loved one recover? And my suggestion to you is take that question to your maker and write it out in a prayer. And in that vow of silence, sit with it and see what comes. And then go and serve others and share your story. Share lessons you are learning, and you will find your path that is laid out for you, that is specific for you. I have the privilege of working with all of you guys and connecting with all of you guys as the future influencers in this cause. I feel like this is a boot camp for the Navy SEALs of influencers that are going to take this message and go change lives. And that is such a sacred experience for me, and I don't take it lightly. I'm very honored that you would invest the time that you invest in hearing me out and reading what I write and contributing and taking that and sharing it with others. because it's in that process where you discover your purpose. And so I hope that today, it's actually been said. I was just listening to one of my favorite mentors podcasts. His name is Russell Brunson, and he brought up a quote, and I can't remember who this originates from, but it says the two most important days of your life are the day you are born and the day you discover why. And that hits. And today might be that day for you. Because if you can experience that shift in identity, the pain doesn't hurt so much and it doesn't drag you down so much, because you realize it's this pain that is qualifying you to receive the gift of empathy, the gift of charity, the gift of compassion, to be able to understand what someone that you're sitting knee to knee with is going through. And that is very powerful. And that's the way I love to live my life. And it's been said that when you discover your path and you know your purpose and you're working in that, then the lines blur between work and play. And I can tell you that that's true at this very moment. I cannot decide, or there is no work or play in this, because it's all like, I just love it. And so I can't tell if I'm working or playing. It's more play for me. I just love this. I would rather do this than anything, just helping people. I just feel so lit up. I feel high. And that's the drug I've been chasing. And so I invite you to partake, and I invite you to take that serious when I extend that invitation to offer up a prayer and ask those questions to your maker, and to sit in a vow of silence with a pen and paper, with no distractions, and just do what you can do on a regular basis to create that channel to receive. Because as you do this and you receive little nudges, I promise you're going to become more and more familiar with that voice of nudge. And as you're obedient to it and you follow it, doors not only will be opened for you, but people will appear on your path that will help you. Also, people will appear on your path that you are supposed to serve. And then everything you've been through is consecrated for the good of mankind. Everything you've been through is a blessing, and it's sacred. That suffering is sacred. And that's what the word passion really comes from, is to suffer for what you love. And so I invite you to rediscover who you are, to wipe those labels off of you that are holding you back, and consider becoming the expert. Consider becoming the influencer. And if you want help, I will be your guide. I will let you know soon as the course gets finalized, where I'm going to walk you by hand through the process of the options of how can you get your message out there? How can you become an influencer? How can you make a living doing this if you so desire? And that's going to be a really cool experience for those of you that want to opt in. So more to come there. I love you guys. I'm grateful that you joined me today, and can't wait for next week. Love you.